Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Naga Monchetti and Charlie State.
Our headlines today. The return of the foreign holiday. From July 6th, British tourists will be allowed to travel to European countries, including Spain, France and Greece, without having to self-isolate when they fly back to the UK.
More mass gatherings as Liverpool fans are urged to stay at home after huge crowds descended on the city centre last night. In West London, there were clashes as police tried to break up an illegal street party.
Praise for the actions of a Glasgow police officer who was one of the 6 people injured during a stabbing attack at a hotel in which the suspect was shot dead.
Good morning. We will not stop. That's the promise from the Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp after delivering their first league title in 30 years.
We know Strictly's on its way back, but what does the future hold for socially distant dance? Mike has been finding out.
Morning in weather, all that heat and humidity is out of the way. It's a weekend of sunshine and showers, still some heavy downpours out there. It's cooler, fresher, unusually windy for the time of year. I've got all your weekend weather on the way.
Good morning. It's Saturday, the 27th of June. Our top story is that British tourists will be able to go on holidays abroad this summer after the government announced a major change to its quarantine rules.
From July the 6th, people coming back to the UK from countries that are classed as low risk won't need to self-isolate for 14 days. The full list will be published next week. It's likely to include the likes of Spain, France and Germany.
The Foreign Office is also expected to relax its current guidance, which advises against all non-essential travel. Here's more from our transport correspondent, Tom Burridge.
After a long lockdown, some people are desperate for a holiday abroad.
We just want to get away from the familiarity of home, being locked up together, as much as I love my family dearly.
And like others, John is relieved that he and his family won't have to quarantine once they travel back from their holiday in Spain.
The self-isolation would be a real barrier to going away because of the timing of our holiday. So when we get back, we haven't got 14 days and before our little ones need to go back to school. They've missed out so much, we can't have them missing out on any more.
A series of travel corridors are planned from July the 6th. It will mean that people from low-risk countries like France, Spain, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, Greece, Turkey, Norway and Finland will not have to self-isolate after they travel. A final list will be confirmed next week. Portugal and Sweden are expected to be given a red rating because of concerns about the prevalence of the virus. Anyone travelling in from there and much of the rest of the world will still be subject to the quarantine rules. The Republic of Ireland has always been exempt.
We believe it can be safe to operate without the need for quarantine.
For airlines which have been battered by the pandemic, it's a move in the right direction.
We really need to move quickly to establish some safe corridors. And we're not talking about throwing it open to the entire world, but where it is safe to operate, we fundamentally believe that we are also safe to operate and we need to do that quickly.
We'll now begin boarding by seat rows.
Row by row boarding this summer should be a more orderly affair.
Hi there.
There'll be new rules on board.
It is required of all passengers to wear your face masks or face covering. That is an exception of children under the age of 6.
And no trolley service, although you hopefully will get water.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Yeah.
But with quarantine removed for many destinations, travel companies hope they can land more bookings. Tom Burridge, BBC News.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Nick Eardley now. Nick, good morning to you. Interesting, isn't it? These rules, they were announced, less than a month ago? And now they're being scaled back for certain countries.
Yeah, morning, Naga. It's interesting because there's been a lot of criticism politically about the way the government's dealt with this, about not bringing in a quarantine back in March when the virus was spreading in Europe but hadn't really reached the UK yet in a meaningful way. Then the blanket ban coming in under 3 weeks ago, actually. Lots of criticism that just applied to everybody, no matter how bad the virus was in some of the countries in Europe. So what I think the government's tried to do here is find some sort of compromise where they say, look, there are some places where we think that the virus isn't spreading all that much, that it's fairly safe to travel to, so we're going to let people go there without having to quarantine themselves for 14 days when they get back. That's going to be a huge relief to the travel industry, to airlines and to many of our viewers, some of whom I suspect are just absolutely dying to get a holiday after what's been a pretty difficult period. The government is acknowledging that not everybody is going to want to do this. Some people might still feel quite anxious about going on holiday. It's going to take a while to get things back to anything like what they were like before the pandemic hit. In many ways, things are going to feel really different as well. You heard in Tom's piece there isn't going to be, you know, for those who like a drink on their way to their holiday, that's not going to happen at the moment because there aren't going to be the trolley services like there have been. Everybody's going to have to wear a mask. But the hope in government is that after 3 months where we've been stuck in the country and the tourism industry has been pretty much dormant, that it can start getting up and running again.
Nick, thanks very much. Nick Eardley there.
Police last night had to deal with a number of public gatherings, including an illegal street party in London and a second night of celebrations for Liverpool fans in the city.
Police and politicians have been urging people to stay at home and maintain social distancing. John Donnison has more.
For a second night, Liverpool fans have been partying hard. But the message from the authorities, it's gone too far. The fire service had to be called out after a blaze at the famous Liver building, apparently caused by fireworks. The city's mayor, Joe Anderson, tweeted that there were too many intoxicated people making it unsafe, saying Covid-19 was still a real risk. Merseyside police have now put a dispersal order in place until Sunday to try to stop people gathering. And around Maida Vale in West London, there were clashes as police tried to break up a mass block party, one of several across the capital this week. But it ended up going on into the night.
Well, police have tried to break this party up several times tonight. They've confiscated the sound system, but there's still a lot of people milling around on the streets. And as you can see, a lot of officers. It's been pretty good-natured so far, but police are definitely encouraging people to go home.
And with lockdown restrictions about to be further eased over the next few weeks, there will be fresh questions about what signal that sends to the public about what people can and can't do. John Donnison, BBC News in West London.
The police officers who responded to yesterday's attack in Glasgow have been praised for their bravery, selflessness and commitment to protect the public.
One constable, who's been named as David White, was seriously injured in the knife attack. His condition has been described as critical but stable.
Conor Gillis is at the scene of Glasgow for us this morning. So, Conor, much praise for the police officers involved. Bring us right up to date.
Yeah, well, the police investigation has continued through the night here in Glasgow, that painstaking recovery of all of the evidence following that attack on this street yesterday afternoon. A floral tribute has also been laid here at the police cordon. What we know about the victims are that there are 6 people. They're all men aged between 17 and 53. They remain in hospital. And among that number is a 42-year-old police officer. You mentioned him there, Constable David White, again being praised by Scotland's Chief Constable for his bravery, running towards the danger when everyone else was running away. Now, we understand the 17-year-old that I mentioned there is a boy from Sierra Leone. He remains in hospital. He is said to have sustained injuries to his foot during a struggle with the attacker. Now, this was the biggest deployment of police in Scotland since the Glasgow airport terror attack in 2007, and the police were quick yesterday to rule out terrorism as a factor which may indicate that they have some idea as to the motives here. But clearly the suspect was shot dead very quickly by armed officers, and that will add to the complex nature of not being able to question him, and again adding to the difficulties in this investigation.
Conor, thanks very much. Conor Gillis there.
There are concerns that millions of children in Yemen could be pushed to the brink of starvation due to a drop in aid caused by the coronavirus pandemic.
The country is 5 years into a civil war that's already led to a humanitarian crisis. 2 million of Yemen's children are malnourished. 1.7 million have been forced to flee their homes. UNICEF says it needs almost $500 million to save the children.
The number of new coronavirus infections in the United States has reached a record high, with 40,000 cases reported on Thursday. The recent surge has prompted two of the biggest states, Texas and Florida, to pause reopening plans. The US has more than 2 million confirmed infections, more than any other country. The Trump administration has stressed the situation is stabilising in most of the country.
Zoos and aquariums in England are set to receive up to £100 million from the government to help them deal with the financial fallout of the pandemic. It's an expansion of a relief fund announced in May. Zoos and aquariums in England were allowed to reopen 2 weeks ago but still remain closed in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.